Matt Miguez has plenty on his mind, and he's ready to share it with the world. It's time to hear the Miguez Mindset.
Welcome into another edition of the Miguez Mindset here on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 in Lake Charles. Matt Miguez here, college baseball less than 3 weeks away, which means it's time to start previews. And we'll start with the defending national champions, the LSU Tigers, coming off of a massive season last year. Jay Johnson's second year at LSU, coming into his third year now in Baton Rouge. Kendall Rogers, the managing editor of D1 Baseball, joins me to preview the Tigers. Kendall, really appreciate you taking the time, man. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, bud. How about yourself? It's kind of one of those things, real quick. Was it like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago in Louisiana, and here in Texas? I'm outside of Houston, and when it was like 19 degrees, I was like, "Oh man, it's college baseball season." Whenever it's 19 degrees and we have frozen pipe warnings everywhere.
Right. No, there's no doubt about it. That first hard freeze is
Yeah.
when you know that the bats are getting ready to come out. But I want to start with
Yeah.
Jay Johnson and the job that he has done in such a short amount of time at LSU.
Yeah.
Are you surprised? Because obviously he had success at Arizona. There's no question about that. But when you come to the SEC and you come to a historic and prestigious program like LSU, the expectations are sky high. And for him to deliver so quickly, were you surprised by that?
I wasn't surprised that he won at a high level. I mean, what I would say, I'm surprised that he won the national championship in year one. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think any coach in college baseball, if you told them, "Hey, you're going to win the national championship in year one," they'd probably be like, "Yeah, you're crazy." But I think once they got Paul Skeens, once he saw how good Skeens was during fall workouts, I think at that point people are like, "Okay, this team has a chance to be really good." When you look at having Tommy White, Dylan Cruz, Trey Morgan, Jordan Thompson, all those guys back, and so I think what he did was incredibly impressive. And what I mean by that is I think so many people around the country, look at LSU and they go, anybody could have won a national championship with those guys. But you know what? It's really, really hard to coach a team when you have that many really good players. Paul Skeens, he's gonna have to stay healthy. You're gonna have to manage all the hype that he's getting. Dylan Cruz, I thought he was like a perfect star player because, Dylan Cruz knew he was good, but he wasn't one of those guys that you had to worry about getting caught up in the drama. Tommy's one of those guys a little bit louder. It could be one of those guys you may think that could get caught up in the drama a little bit, but again, they were able to keep him rather grounded. So I think, talent-wise, yeah, they were a national championship caliber club, but I also think Jay did a national championship caliber coaching job just to not only coach his team on the field, but also just manage all the different egos behind the scenes. Because, as we're seeing in college football right now, when you have programs with, tons of talent, like the shelf life on those guys is pretty short. If they don't think they're going to start, or they don't start one game, in some instances they're like, "Yeah, peace out, I'm out of here." So I just think what he did was really impressive when you combine the on field with the off field.
Now, headed into this season after everything
Mhm.
they accomplished last year, typically when you win a national championship, you have a lot of turnover. Dylan Cruz is gone. Paul Skeens is gone. Cade
Mhm.
Beloso is gone. Trey Morgan, Jordan Thompson, Braden Jobert, Gavin Dugas, so on and so forth. Um, what are you expecting out of this year's team early on? Because obviously you have Tommy White back, Hayden Travinsky's back as one of the leaders. You have plenty of young talent with Josh Pearson and Brady
Yeah.
Neal and Jared Jones. What are kind of your early expectations for this team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this team's going to be a little different from the get go. Last year also, you had Paul, but I think offensively they were an elite team from day one. Do I think LSU with the current offensive lineup that they have is going to be just a elite, phenomenal offensive team from day one? I don't think so. I think this is a club that systematically or progressively be the right word, progressively will get better and better as the season progresses. And then at the end of the year, I think they'll be an elite lineup. But I think to start the season, I actually really like just the overall feel of this pitching staff. I mean, I think LSU's going to be much deeper on the mound this year. There's a lot more quality depth options. I think if you look at the weekend rotation with Thatcher Hurd, Luke Coleman, and Gage Jump, that'll be as good as anybody's rotation in the country. Whereas last year, I felt like, at least until the end of the year, when Hurd and guys like that were pitching at a really high level, but I thought, for most of the season, if you were an SEC team, you kind of threw Paul into a different bucket, and then you kind of felt like, hey, I have a shot against the other two. Whereas this year, it's like good, 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 or three very goods there. And I think when you look at the back end of the bullpen, getting Gavin Guidry back, Nate Ackenhausen, for my money, is one of the more valuable, relievers in the country. Just a really talented left-handed pitcher, kind of pitches over his talent level a little bit. And then, getting Griffin Herring back. And of course, I mean, got to talk about Cam Johnson, the talented freshman.
Yep.
The thing that's beautiful about Cam Johnson is, he could have very easily signed for millions of dollars, opted not to go to college. But he went to college, and guess what? He's going to be able to kind of work his way slowly into things. And that's important, because what you don't want to do with a guy like him is, when everybody expects him to be, kind of Paul Skeens caliber from day one, you don't have to throw him into the fire. They can work him in there, like, 1 or 2 inning stints, and then kind of go from there. So I love the depth of this team. I think that out of everything from last year to this year, that's the biggest difference is just the overall pitching depth.
Last year you saw Jay Johnson and his staff attack the transfer portal with Paul Skeens and Tommy White, the two biggest names to come to Baton Rouge last year. This year they kind of did more of the same. You brought up Luke Coleman, you brought up Gage Jump. You also go get Michael Braswell at shortstop out of South Carolina. What are your thoughts on the transfers that they've brought in, and who do you see making the most immediate impact in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, I'll start with the position guys, since we've talked so much about the arms. But obviously Braswell and Mac Bingham from Arizona, he was another big pickup. I kind of consider Bingham the better pickup there. I just think when you look at his history at Arizona, was one of the leading hitters in the Pac-12 last year. I want to say he hit around 360 with some power production. I just really like having a guy like him in the outfield, a guy like him in the middle, kind of top to middle of that order. A guy that's seen a lot of at-bats, and a guy that's very familiar with Jay Johnson. Let's not forget that from Jay's previous stint at U of A. But, Michael Braswell is an interesting player. I think he's really solid defensively. Obviously, he left something to be desired offensively at South Carolina. And so I think the biggest thing for him is taking a step forward at the plate. He did that in the fall. I was talking to Jay when I was there in the fall at the Purple and Gold series, and he did think that Michael had gotten a little bit more aggressive. Has put a little bit more loud contact when he's at the plate, when he hits the ball. So I think naturally under Jay, he's going to take a step forward. How big of a step forward will he take? To be determined. That's the thing about JT last year and Jordan Thompson, is for all the grief that LSU fans gave that guy, like, he was incredibly clutch at times. I get that his defense was a little bit questionable, but like, he was really clutch offensively at times. And I mean, let's not forget, he hit for a solid average and hit for power. So that's a pretty big shoes for Braswell to fill, to be honest with you.
Yep.
Pitching wise, I think when you look at the transfers, Gage Jump is the guy for me that has people are going to talk about Luke Coleman. Well, I think Gage Jump, actually, in terms of just raw talent, is the guy that has the most upside. I just think he, if you look at his, when he was at UCLA before he got hurt, it was elite stuff. He's going to get up to 94, 95 with his fastball. He's got really good secondary stuff. He's a first-round pick if he's healthy, and he throws the way that we kind of think he can. And then, Luke Coleman, he was a guy that, famously was scratched from the start last year, that, ended up in Brad Bohannon at Alabama getting fired. Just ironic that he ends back up at LSU. But, I think you look at, Luke Coleman as a guy who just has really good feel for the zone. The pitchability is off the charts, and LSU kind of has him slated in that number 2 spot to start the season in the rotation. And I think that's perfect, because I think if you're LSU, if you win with Thatcher Hurd on a Friday night, you're in great shape with Luke Coleman. If you lose, you know exactly what you're going to get from Holman on Saturday. So it's a perfect segue to get a win, then have a chance to win that series on Sunday. But yeah, I love those additions. Especially to me, Gage Jump, for me, I'm just excited to see what he can do this year for those guys.
We found out last week at LSU Media Day that Tommy White had to have shoulder surgery as soon as the season ended. He missed the entire fall. And when you hear that, and then you go back and look at his numbers from last year, he hit 374 with 24 doubles, 24 homers, and 105 RBIs. My first thought sitting there in that press conference when he said that, Kendall, was, well, God, if he can do this unhealthy, what's he going to do when he's healthy?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really
What's the
interesting.
ceiling for Tommy this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think he can hit 5, 6, 7 more home runs, hit for a higher average. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think if you look at Tommy, especially at the end of last year, I think everybody kind of could pick up on the fact that that was bothering him a little bit, because you could tell when he swung and stuff like that, there's a little bit of a grimace there. But it just kind of shows you, for all the chains and stuff that he wears and all that and kind of flashiness, he's a really hard nosed kid, and that kind of attitude permeates the rest of the team. So yeah, I mean he just has unbridled potential. I'm intrigued to see what he does at the next level, because I mean in a jersey, like, he's not how you draw it up. If you're drafting a third baseman, like, Tommy White is not who you're looking for in terms of physique, but the guy's a heck of a hitter. And obviously the makeup there in terms of just, being a hard nosed, hard working baseball player is clearly there.
The schedule this year for the Tigers is interesting. The big thing's got to be the weekend tournament in Houston, where they play at Minute Maid Park against Texas, Louisiana, Texas State. You've also got some big SEC matchups with Mississippi State, Florida, Arkansas, so on and so forth. Just kind of walk me through this schedule and where you think LSU could have some serious success, and then where they might struggle a little bit.
Yeah, clearly, I think if you look at their schedule at the very beginning, they're going to rack up some wins. I think more than likely they'll be undefeated going into Minute Maid, where they'll face Texas, the Cajuns, and Texas State. And all three of those clubs ought to be pretty good. I know we'll talk about the Cajuns in a bit, but I think they're going to have a really good club. Texas State, Steven Strauss did a phenomenal job at Texas State to kind of turn them. For those of you out there very familiar with the Sun Belt, turn a program that I've kind of felt like has been a perennial underachiever and turn them into an achiever. He's done a really nice job there, so that won't be easy. Xavier is always tough. Then I'll tell you what. When you look at those next 3 weeks, or next 4 weeks, really, that's incredibly intriguing when you think about getting Mississippi State on the road. You talk about a big series for somebody. That is a massive series for Mississippi State for a program that won a national championship 2 years ago or 3 years ago. They missed a national champ, or they missed the postseason in the last 2 years. I circle that one as a big one for LSU, because I think if you're going to get LSU this year, it's going to need to be early. And I can promise you, Hell State's really going to want that one. So that's big. And then to get Florida, Arkansas, Vandy at Tennessee 4 straight weeks. Jay Johnson better stock up on some coffee. That is as tough a stretch as you're ever going to get in college baseball. You're talking about one, two. You're talking about 4 top 10 teams, 4 straight weeks.
Yeah, it's
welcome
murderer's
to the
row
SEC.
for sure.
So I think the big thing for the Tigers is if they can navigate that. I mean, again, LSU fans, high expectations, but like, I'm being dead serious here. If you can go 2-2 in those 4 series, I think if you're Jay Johnson, you're okay with that.
Kendall Rogers, the managing editor of D1 Baseball. Kendall, before I let you run, man, I know we're going to preview the Cajuns for next week, but before I let you run on this one, tell our listeners where they can find your work with D1.
Yeah, man, just d1baseball.com or at d1baseball on Twitter/X. Right now, we actually have a promotion, 24th season as a coupon code. That'll get you 24% off any subscription package. I always tell people, if you like college baseball at all, scores, analytics, advanced stats, inside stories in your team, we have everything. So obviously a lot of LSU and Cajun fans already on there, but we'd love to have some more.
Kendall Rogers, thank you for joining me, man.
You got it, buddy.
Make sure you subscribe to our social media at ESPN_SWLA. You can follow me on social media as well at MiguezMatt. Next week, Kendall sits down with me once again to preview the Louisiana Raging Cajuns right here on the Miguez Mindset on ESPN 103.7 Lafayette and 104.1 Lake Charles.